What is going on, guys? I'm him, channel of Geeked, and welcome to my £600/$750 Witcher 3 PC build. Now, before I start the video, I'd like to give a thank you to the Tech Lemon because this new video layer I thought of is pretty cool, and pretty much I kind of got the inspiration to actually use it from the Tech Lemon. So definitely go and check his channel out. I'll leave a link in the description below. Now, as we all know, Witcher 3 is currently the most demanding game out there, and in my opinion, one of the best looking games out there as well. But it requires the most demanding hardware as well. So here I have compiled a build log which gives you the best performance on Witcher 3, so you'll be able to play at 1080p at ultra settings with anti-aliasing on. Just not the best performance, but not even such a high price. Now, we're not going to go all the way to a £1,000 price tag. We're going to stay on the £600 mark, and this is an AMD. So this build is powered by AMD, meaning we pretty much got all our AMD components. Starting with the processor, we're going with the AMD Power Driver 8350. That's the FX 8350 4GHz processor, and it can turbo up to 4.2 GHz. Runs on socket AM3 and has a monstrous 8 cores. It does support DDR3 2133 MHz support, and it also has 16 megabytes of L3 cache. That's a lot of cache on a CPU like this. Now, this is the FX series processor, and looking at the recommended specs on Witcher 3, I definitely thought the FX 8350 can definitely handle this game, especially with the type of unmatched multitasking and pure core performance, and with this new architecture with actually a great price. So you're going to get more cores, more speed, but you're going to be spending less money. That's pretty much how I think of AMD versus Intel. You're going to get more cores, more speed, but less money. Then we've got AMDs, you got less cores, more powerful cores, and more money. You're going to be spending a lot more money, but you're definitely getting better core per core performance. So the FX 8350 definitely is a great graphics card, and if it's paired with an R9 290, which we'll talk about later, you basically have a very powerful gaming setup. For our motherboard, we're going with the Gigabyte G8 970A DS3P. This is an AMD 970 board, meaning it has the 970 chipset, and this is one of the cheapest boards which actually run an FX 8350. Now, we all know that the FX 8350 requires at least a 970 chipset minimum. It can go up to 990, but you can't have a 960, I believe. It doesn't run properly. And this is a great motherboard. Even though it's the cheapest one you can get for £51, it is pretty good, featuring AM3 and AM3 Plus support, DDR3 memory support, SATA 3 6GB per second support, and SATA RAID support. It also features two PCIe 2.0 16x lanes. Even though it doesn't have Crossfire SLI boards, it's nice to have two 16x lanes, meaning you can add extra expansion cards of different lengths. For our memory, we're going to go with Kingston HyperX Fury Blue memory. Now, I've used this in my old build before, and this is definitely a great memory. It comes with a blue heat spreader. You can get different types of heat spreaders. It has a 1600 MHz frequency, and it's DDR3 memory. It's pretty much really good memory, and it can overclock to 1866 MHz, meaning you're going to get a lot of power. These components are definitely aimed to be overclocked, and especially with the memory, I think this is really good value memory. Now, in a build like this, and pretty much any build out there which you're going to be doing gaming or video editing on, an SSD is a must-have. Now, as we see Windows 10 coming out, it's nice to have a snappy SSD to launch it, especially with such a good experience. And there's loads of SSDs out there, and I've chosen the SanDisk 64GB Pulse drive. Now, this is a 64GB drive, meaning there's enough storage to have our operating system, which will takes about 30 gigs, and then we can also input Witcher 3 or any other games that we want to play on this SSD for fast launch times. In my opinion, it's one of my favorite SSDs on the market, which is the bang for the buck, since it features SATA 6GB per second. It's a 2.5-inch internal drive, so it's quite small, and it has a write speed of 240 MHz with random read of 7200 IOPS. That is pretty high, especially for this type of build, and it can do a read speed of 490 megabits per second. So you're definitely getting really high performance for this SSD, and it's quite a good bang for the buck SSD as well. For our main drive, we're still going with our 1TB Seagate Barracuda ST10 drive. Now, this is one of my favorite drives I've used pretty much in all my builds. It's a 3.5-inch drive, a SATA 3 drive with featuring SATA 6GB per second support, 7200 RPM spindle speed with 64 megabytes of cache, and pretty much 8 millisecond response time. Very good very good hard drive, and overall very good for the money. For our graphics card, we're going with the Gigabyte AMD Radeon R9 290. This is one of my favorite bang for the buck graphics cards as well. Why? Because it's an R9 290, meaning it can handle Witcher 3 very, very well. Now, a type of graphics card like this wants to be overclocked, especially it's the Gigabyte version, meaning it has the WindForce 3X cooler, meaning that it requires a 450 watt power supply. Well, it takes 450 watts out of the power supply straight away if you're going to be overclocking this, because it has 2 8M and 4 6M copper heat pipes. So definitely really good heating system in here. It also features inclined fans and the Gigabyte triangle technology, which only does not just provide effective heat dissipation but also enables high performance due to its lower temperatures, and meaning that you can definitely overclock with this type of graphics card, especially featuring a 947 base clock, and it can overclock pretty much how much you want it to overclock to, because it does require a 600 watt power supply. Even though it does have a 450 watt intake, it is a minimum have a 600 watts, but that's okay, so we already got that sorted. One of my favorite graphics card is the R9 290. Even if I don't have one, it's one of the best bang for the buck GPUs out there. For our case, we're going with the Thermaltake V3 Black Edition MIDI Tower case. Now, this is one of my favorite cases as well, because it has great cooling support. You can have a 240mm rad on the top, and if you're going to add a water block to your card, you can have a 120 on the side or the rear. You're getting a very high cooling support, or you can have a 120 in the front. There's so much cooling support in this type of case. It's an ATX case, but all the cooling options available are so good, which really for me is great, and especially it features a bottom mounted power supply, and it even features water cooling grommets, rubber grommets, meaning you can have water cooling pipes with reservoirs and pipes going everywhere, whatever you're going to do. Really good case. It's a high-end case. It also features a transparent window so you can see the components inside, and it has a built-in filter to a 5¼ inch drive bay to keep all the dust away. It also comes with a built-in rear 120mm silent fan with a really nice blue LED. For our power supply, we're going with the EVGA Supernova 750 watt hybrid modular power supply. Now, when it says hybrid, it means it's not a fully modular power supply, it's a semi-modular power supply. Meaning, like, some of the cables like your power supply, your CPU, your SATA, and your VGA and your peripherals, they're all going to be separate except for your actual main cables like your 24-pin power connector. Now, this is actually quite good, so you can get nice neat cable management and not use the cables which you're not going to use. It features an 80+ bronze certified certification, uses the highest quality Japanese brand capacitors, ensure long-term reliability, hybrid modular design to reduce the clutter and improve the airflow, and a quiet 2-ball bearing fan for near silent performance, with its high amperage multi-rail design for maximum power and efficiency, meaning that you can overclock your CPU. Add something like a Hyper 212 Evo to this build, overclock your CPU to something like 5 GHz, which it can reach on that type of cooler, overclock your graphics card to something like 1100 MHz, and you're basically getting a really powerful build. And even if you're not going to overclock this build alone, no overclocks like needed, it provides such great performance from games like Witcher 3, which require the best specs possible. And I think this power supply is great, and I think overall all of these components are great and definitely designed for Witcher 3 itself. Hope you guys enjoy this build. Remember, the build comes to £600 or $750 if you live in the US. Remember to check out the tech lemon, link in the description below. Remember to like, remember to subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.